Wars in the digital age, how they shaped our world. Wars have defined the course of history, but what if we could have chosen peace? In the digital age, conflict not only shape nations, they shape economies, lives, and the very future of our world. Join us as we explore how these wars began, who led them, and what the world might look like if peace had been the path. The Gulf War, 1990 to 1991. What started it all? In August 1990, Iraq under Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, claiming oil theft and territorial disputes. Beneath the surface, a fight for dominance over oil, a resource that would ignite conflict across decades. The president at the time, US President George W.H. Bush, led a coalition to defend Kuwait, aiming to stabilize the region. This aggression will not stand, President Bush declared in a speech to the nation.
This will not stand, this aggression against Kuwait.
How it all ended. In early 1991, Operation Desert Storm liberated Kuwait in just 43 days. But the cost, both in human lives and economic toll, was staggering. What are the economic impacts? Iraq's economy, already suffering, was hit hard by sanctions and bombings, leading to widespread subsidies. Meanwhile, Kuwait's oil infrastructure was decimated, leading to soaring oil prices. What would Kuwait be without oil? Asked a Kuwaiti citizen, reflecting on the loss. What's happening today? Kuwait thrives economically, but Iraq faced decades of sanctions, war, and instability. There's a thought-provoking question that needs to be answered though. Could alternative energy solutions have reduced the geopolitical tensions that often revolve around oil, like solar, nuclear energy? And what if question? Without the Gulf War, Iraq might have maintained a stronger oil-driven economy, potentially changing the balance of power in the Middle East. Kosovo War, 1998 to 1999. What started it all? Ethnic tensions between the Serbs and Albanians in Kosovo boiled over. Violence spread, and NATO intervened to prevent a humanitarian crisis. The US president at the time, President Bill Clinton, authorized airstrike.
My fellow Americans, today our armed forces joined our NATO allies in airstrikes against Serbian forces responsible for the brutality in Kosovo. We have acted with resolve for several reasons. We act to protect thousands of innocent people in Kosovo from a mounting military offensive. We act to prevent a wider war, to defuse a powder keg at the heart of Europe that has exploded twice before in this century with catastrophic results. And we act to stand united with our allies for peace. By acting now, we are upholding our values, protecting our interests, and advancing the cause of peace.
Leading NATO forces in a campaign to stop ethnic cleansing. How did it all end? After 78 days of intense bombing, Serbian forces withdrew and Kosovo declared independence, but the scars remain. We lost everything, says a survivor in Kosovo, but we rebuilt. What's the economic impact? Serbia pays heavy sanctions, with 25% of its industry destroyed. Kosovo, though free, faced immense challenges rebuilding from the ashes. How is Serbia doing today? Serbia has stabilized economically, but Kosovo remains one of the poorest regions in Europe. Thought-provoking question that means answering. How do these wars continue to impact the lives of ordinary citizens decades after the last bullet was fired? What if question? If diplomacy had worked, perhaps the region could have thrived without the long-term scars of war. The Afghanistan War, 2001 to 2021. What started it all? The tragic 9/11 attacks in 2001 led to a 20-year conflict as the US sought to dismantle the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. We will not falter, we will not fail, President W. Bush vowed to shake a nation.
Our nation, this generation, will lift a dark threat of violence from our people and our future. We will rally the world to this cause by our efforts, by our courage. We will not tire, we will not falter, and we will not fail.
How it all ended. In 2021, after 2 decades, US forces withdrew, leaving the Taliban in control once again. The snake eating its tail, as is commonly known. What are the economic impact? The US spent over $2 trillion on the war, while Afghanistan's economy remains heavily reliant on international aid. Ordinary citizens still bear the brunt of the conflict afterward. What's happening today? Afghanistan faces economic collapse with little hope for recovery in sight. We all want peace, please, an Afghan child. Some thought-provoking question that needs an answer. What lessons have we missed from history that could prevent future conflicts? What if, without war, Afghanistan might have been a hub for regional trade and development, just like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, and the Gulf states? The Iraq War, summer 2003 to fall 2011. What started it all? In the summer of 2003, the US under George W. Bush accused Iraq of harboring weapons of mass destruction.
This hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
Later found out to be true. The world watched as Iraq was plunged into chaos. How it all ended. After Saddam Hussein's fall, Iraq spiraled into chaos. The US withdrew in 2011, but the region remained unstable while still keeping their military base in Iraq. What are the economic impacts? The war cost over $1 trillion, damaged Iraq's oil industry, and left the country deeply divided. The US faced economic strain from war spending.
In the Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed.
What's happening in today's Iraq? Iraq's economy has been slow to recover, still dependent on oil, but plagued by corruption. What are some thought-provoking questions that need answering? Would diplomacy have been different in a pre-digital age before social media and globalized news? What if scenario? Without a war, Iraq would have led the oil market, fueling growth across the Middle East, like the Kuwaits of the world, the Omans, and the Saudis of today's digital age. The Syrian Civil War, summer 2011 to present day. How it all started. The Arab Spring of 2011 sparked protests across Syria as Bashar al-Assad's regime cracked down. The situation escalated into a brutal civil war. On September 1, the president at the time, President Barack Obama, laid out a case for a targeted military action against Syrian regimes.
10 days ago, the world watched in horror as men, women, and children were massacred in Syria in the worst chemical weapons attack of the 21st century. Yesterday, the United States presented a powerful case that the Syrian government was responsible for this attack on its own people. Our intelligence shows the Assad regime and its forces preparing to use chemical weapons, launching rockets in the highly populated suburbs of Damascus, and acknowledging that a chemical weapons attack took place. And all of this corroborates what the world can plainly see. Hospitals overflowing with victims, terrible images of the dead. All told, well over 1,000 people were murdered. Several hundred of them were children. Young girls and boys gassed to death by their own government. Now, this attack is an assault on human dignity. It also presents a serious danger to our national security. It risks making a mockery of the global prohibition on the use of chemical weapons. It endangers our friends and our partners along Syria's borders, including Israel, Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, and Iraq. It could lead to escalating use of chemical weapons or their proliferation to terrorist groups who would do our people harm. In a world with many dangers, this menace must be confronted. After careful deliberation, I have decided that the United States should take military action against Syrian regime targets.
Targets as a result of the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons that killed over 1,000 people, including children and adults. How it all ended? Ongoing. No clear resolution, with over 500,000 people unalive and millions of Syrians displaced. What are the economic impacts? Syria's economy is in ruins. The war has cost billions, and reconstruction could take more than 5 decades. What's happening today? Syria remains divided, with little hope for economic recovery in the near future. What are some thought-provoking questions that need answers to? As new technologies emerge, how might future conflict play out differently? Will cyber warfare replace traditional warfare in shaping the global order? What if scenario? If peaceful reforms has taken root, Syria might have been a thriving economy, connecting trade between Europe and Asia, with Israel in the middle connecting it all. Let's not forget, Syria could have been the new Silk Road of Asia. The Ukraine-Russian War, 2022 to present day. How it all began. In February 2022, Russia, led by Vladimir Putin, invaded Ukraine, citing NATO expansion as a threat to Russian security. I call BS. Insert land grab. Donetsk, Kharkiv, Kherson, Luhansk, Mykolaiv, and Zaporizhia Oblast. The US president at the time, Mr. Joe Biden, condemned the invasion, leading global efforts to support Ukraine.
Let us speak plainly. A permanent member of the United Nations Security Council invaded its neighbor, attempted to erase a sovereign state from the map. Russia has shamelessly violated the core tenets of the United Nations Charter. No more important than the clear prohibition against countries taking the territory of their neighbor by force.
Present day, more than $250 billion has been spent on Ukraine. How it all ended? Sorry, it's still ongoing. What are the economic impacts? Both Ukraine and Russia face economic hardship. Ukraine's economy contracted by over 30%, while Russia grapples with sanctions. Global markets, especially energy and food, are in turmoil. Don't forget, Russia's main export is energy, and its main customer, Europe, is cut off. What is happening today? The war continues. There's a thought-provoking question we need to ask. Could diplomacy have prevailed, preventing the economic turmoil and humanitarian crisis we face today? What if scenario for the listeners at home? If diplomacy had prevailed, Eastern Europe could have seen unprecedented growth, while energy prices might have remained stable worldwide. And you know what happens when energy prices are stable? Everybody buys new cars. Sudan Civil War, 2023 to present day. How it all started. In April 2023, Sudan's simmering power struggle exploded into open conflict between two rival factions, the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, led by General Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo. What are the impacts on civilians? This war has caused catastrophic suffering for the Sudanese people. More than 20,000 civilians have lost their lives. In the capital, Khartoum, relentless street battles have left essential infrastructure in ruins. In Darfur, another city, civilians face targeted violence, with the RSF accused of ethnic cleansing against non-Arab populations. So what you have to pay attention to, there's two factions in Sudan, the non-Arabs and the Arabs. What are the economic impact? Sudan's economy, already fragile from previous conflict, is further strained by the destruction of infrastructure, closed borders, and blocked aid. There's no aid coming in, none going out. Inflation has skyrocketed, and millions face food insecurity as supply chains collapse. What is happening today? The conflict has spread across Sudan, with millions displaced internally and into neighboring countries. International aid efforts are constrained, and there are increasing calls for stronger global intervention as the humanitarian crisis worsens. Some questions that need answering to. How can international communities respond effectively when sovereign nations are torn apart by internal conflict? Remember, this is not the first time. Sudan has always been embroiled in civil war. What if questions? Had peace negotiations succeeded, Sudan might have seen stable growth and recovery from years of economic hardship. Some closing reflection. The Sudanese civil war reminds us how internal conflicts can devastate a nation. Peace remains elusive, but the resilience of Sudan's people endures. Oh, one more thought-provoking question. Why aren't global news networks paying attention to Sudan's war as they have with other conflicts, like what's going on in the Gaza Strip between Israel and Hamas, like those in Ukraine or Syria? What determines which war makes headlines? And what impact does this have on the world's response to those crises? Are these because they are Africans? And don't forget what's happening in Myanmar. So for some weird reason, whenever there is a genocide in Africa, there's no coverage. When there's one in Myanmar, there's no coverage. But we have a lot of coverage for the Syrians, for the Palestinians, and for the Ukrainians. Does skin color has a part to play in it? That's for you to answer.
In summary, these wars not only took lives, but reshaped nations and economies. What if peace had prevailed instead of war? How different might our world look like today? The choices we make, whether war or peace, will shape our future. Let's hope, moving forward, we choose wisely. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into global history.